What I want to ask you, dude, is what you gonna do when Ozzy Osbourne, Michael Jamal Warner, and Hulk Hogan run wild on you, dude? Really been a hard week. Sort of I guess, the week my childhood died. Hulk Hogan, the Hulkster, the Hulkamaniac, the biggest drawing professional wrestler of all time, dead today. A few days ago, Malcolm Jamal Warner died. I was a big Cosby Show fan back in the 80s and really identify with that character. They had an episode there where they came up with him being, I'm dyslexic, and they came up with Theo Huxtable being dyslexic, and that was the first time I'd ever seen that portrayed in any type of media. So that was something that always kind of stuck with me and touched me and really made me feel like a lot of connection to him and that character, and I always really liked his acting. I've seen him in a whole bunch of things since then. And of course, Ozzy Osbourne, man, man, they say fucking, if you listen to the likes of Ozzy Osbourne, man, I say it was short fucking going to hell, man. What about your case, man? Whatever, get all fucking time down. So that was really tragic. Of course, being a huge Road Warriors fan since I was a very small child, I loved Iron Man. That was my first ever real favorite song before I even knew what it was. Years went by before even knowing that was Black Sabbath. That was Iron Man. Just hearing that song, and seeing the Road Warriors run out and just beat the living hell out of anyone. And it was so dynamic as a kid. They looked so different than everyone else. Because in reality, they weren't wrestling. They were just beating the fuck out of two jobbers, just beating their asses. And it looked real, because it was. But it still looked real, and that was very entertaining, very dynamic with the power of that music, with the shoulder pads, the spikes, the studded leather, all that sort of thing. They looked like badasses, with those big pumped up muscles. And that song really always resonated with me. And Ozzy was probably even through college my absolute favorite. I've seen Ozzy in concert three times, once by himself and twice with the original lineup of Black Sabbath with Tony Iommi, with Geezer Butler, with Bill Ward. Um, full lineup. One time it was just Black Sabbath. One time it was Ozzy, like split half just Ozzy stuff and then half Black Sabbath. And the other time he was by himself. So I've seen him perform a ton of times, three times, and he's the furthest I've ever driven to see anybody in concert. Not that I've ever driven very far. My buddy Nate Coach and I went down in 1998 to Raleigh, North Carolina, about 4.5 hour drive from where I'm in Virginia, and we saw Ozzy, and it was like 11, 12 hours of music the whole day. There were tons and tons of people there. And it's definitely sucked, man. We've lost some of the greats of heavy metal, in the last maybe decade plus. Dave Brockie of War, Ronnie James Dio, Ozzy Osbourne. Who am I forgetting, Ryan? Who else died? Heavy metal.
Pete Steele.
Oh, well, Pete Steele died before that, but yeah, Pete Steele saw Type of Negative in concert, saw War in concert, saw Dio in concert, Lemmy Kilminster. That's who I'm trying to think of. Saw Motorhead in concert. Love Motorhead. Love Lemmy. Well, for that matter, love Type of Negative and love War too. Who are a Virginia band? They're actually from just down the road from where I am, the Gore Bar and all that. So um, yeah, it was really touching, really emotional, really horrible. I know a lot of you are definitely feeling a loss for the Prince of Darkness. Well, Ozzy, man, fucking well, man, fucking, what the hell, man, I've been on your team, man, for some time, man, but, what, fucking, maybe I made a mistake then. What is all this, man, it's fucking bullshit, man. Or, if we're talking Hulk Hogan, uh, I was definitely a big fan of Hulk Hogan, and we can never ever forget uh, with the NWO, with Scott Hall, with Kevin Nash, revolutionizing wrestling and the biggest and best angle in the history of the sport of professional wrestling that really propelled it to becoming a household name. If you're not as old as me, you wouldn't realize that professional wrestling was actually cool. It was for guys like it was like the coolest thing there was. On Monday nights, every single guy from like 8 to 90 was watching professional wrestling on Monday nights. The ratings were amazing, and you could talk to, and you could find a dude on the street like, "What about that? What about that Hulk Hogan?" And he'd be like, "What do you know, some dude? I'm gonna tell you about Hulk Hogan. I've been down with him since he was Sterling Gold, dude. I've been down with Terry Boulder since Florida, dude. And I'm gonna tell you this right now about Hiro Matsuda, that piece of trash." So you really had now it's sort of a goofy niche product that no one really cares very much about. but there was a lot of passion. A lot of people were really, really into it, really fascinated by it because there were still the tiny vestiges of kayfabe left at that point. Just, I mean, it was damn near dead. Not like it is now, where like the announcers are literally telling you, "Well, this is fake as shit. You shouldn't be believing this, dumbass." But it still had a presentation of as if this was real, and you could allow yourself to suspend for at least a moment while you were watching professional wrestling in the late '90s, in the early '90s, in the late '80s, and seeing really the ascent of Hulk Hogan, body slamming Andre the Giant, taking that monkey ass to the woodshed, and just defeated guy after guy after guy after guy, whether it was King Kong Bundy or whether it was Terry Funk or whether it was Big John Studd. He dropped a leg one after another after another. Archangel Gabriel might get him. He might get a leg dropped on him today. It may have already happened, and in fact, it has happened. There's going to be what it could be. I'm running from Archangel Michael. No, he'll get the boot and he'll get a leg dropped on him and he'll get cover for three as well, just the way he always should have been. And we know that because we know exactly what's going on here with Hulk Hogan dropping the leg. One, two, three. Definitely the guy who drew the most money in the history of professional wrestling, unequivocally. And that is what professional wrestling is defined as, a vehicle for drawing money, making money, which makes Hulk Hogan the greatest professional wrestler of all time. He was a guy that was on top in the wrestling business for like 25 years. Uh, Completely destroyed the small amount of time Steve Austin or The Rock was on top, and you certainly can't put anyone else even close to the stratosphere. Um, since 2000 or so, wrestling has just fallen through the floor. So people like a Roman Reigns or John Cena don't barely, they pale in comparison. And people that quite frankly would have probably been lucky to be better than jobbers in the '90s. They weren't going over Hulk Hogan, that's for damn sure, brother. They weren't going over on the Macho Man, on Ric Flair. Hell no, they weren't. So it's definitely sad. As you can see, I come with heavy heart. Hulk Hogan with Ozzy Osbourne. I never actually got to see Hulk Hogan wrestle in person. One of the few guys I didn't. I got to see tons of them wrestle in person. I saw Ric Flair wrestle in person. Starcade '88, Starcade '91. Ric Flair wouldn't have been in '91. He was there in '88. He was in the main event. I think it was against Lex Luger. Um, saw the Road Warriors in person. Dusty Rhodes in person. Macho Man Randy Savage in person wrestling. I saw The Undertaker in person wrestling. Kane, Ken Shamrock, Vader. Um, just tons and tons of different guys. Sting, the Steiner. I think I saw both Steiner. I know I saw Rick Steiner wrestle Mike Rotunda for the TV belt in '88 at the Norfolk Scope. My father took me to those two Starcades. Starcade was essentially WCW's version, and at the time NWA's version of WrestleMania. It was their biggest show of the year, and in a way, you could say was they used to call it the granddaddy of them all, baby, if you will, the Rove, the thing. Of a St. Peter game, welcome to Hulk Hogan, baby. It's me there, baby, the Rove, if you will. Iron Sheik, Asra Baba, Hulk Hogan. So now I do a bunch of impersonations of dead professional wrestlers and Ozzy Osbourne. Interestingly enough, all three of the guys that died, all three of them were face claims in one of the last two D&D games that I ran. I have a town that I raid in sort of the shadow of Baldur's Gate, about a 4-day ride from Baldur's Gate. It's the town and like an area adjoining to it. I guess you say a county called Bone Rust, fictionalized out there in the fields of the dead. And Malcolm Jamal Warner played the head priest of the Temple of Lathander, who I painted slightly sinister because some of the player characters were followers of Merkel and kind of on the evil side. So I portrayed them sort of antagonistically towards the players. And I had Malcolm Jamal Warner, and I had as a face claim, the face picture you would use to show the players. Okay, this is kind of what the guy looks like. And I think I found a picture of him from the show Jeremiah, which was good. The first season, the second season was awful, awful. Don't that's awful. Don't watch the second season. Just pretend they only made one season and canceled it there. As it was a good concept for a show with Luke Perry, but that second season was awful. They actually made a role playing game of it too. As kind of strange as that might be. So that was interesting. I had that Malcolm Jamal Warner character there, and well, like I said, I always really identified with him and really liked him as an actor. I've seen a ton of stuff he was in. I always kind of keep an eye out for him. I think he was a pretty underrated actor, and I really liked him on the Cosby Show. Um, you know, I guess Bill Cosby's a little little dicey these days, maybe. But then you got of course, Hulk Hogan. I did a video about the Hulk Hogan character, the Hyperion brother. Nick, Black Lodge Games called me. I think literally the second he had found out about it, just before I talked to him, and he called me. We talked about an hour and a half on the phone today, just lamenting the Hulkster's passing, Ozzy Osbourne's passing. He's a big fan of that stuff, just like I am. So we were going over that, and he remembered that, of course, living Hyperion in my game. The man that stood 24 feet at 24 inches tall, dude. It could never be 26 feet. It was 24 feet at 24 inches tall. The 24-inch pythons, the largest arms in the multiverse, dude. So it was the silliest character I've ever had in a game of mine, but it worked. It really worked. He stood tall. He had the a chain shirt of platinum, and he just ripped his shirt off. And he was the from what the scion of my friend David, his character Frederick, who he was descended from Hyperion, and he had that bloodline, that blood pumping through his veins, and it was really funny, sort of slowly, sort of planting the clues, about the snakes and this sort of thing. He's like, "Oh, snakes!" Completely running the other way. Of course, snakes and a pythons, brother. That's right, brother Frederick. You know what I'm talking about, dude. Uh, so it was really high energy, really pulse pounding, and of course, completely silly fun. It was a contrast to the generally very dark, grim, serious tone that the games take. But if you can interject the light into the darkness, and you can make things like if everything is really serious, grim, it can it can be undercut if you add some comical elements. But at the same point, if you add some correctly and properly, it can really make the dark and the grim look more serious and more dark. Because if your baseline is super dark, then everything else kind of it's kind of all the same, and then that's just baseline. That's not really dark or gritty. I had that. So he was a Titan Hyperion, a Greek Titan, and I used uh, Ozzy Osbourne as Tall, the wizard. It was a tall man, fucking hell, man, And my son Ryan he's of course a big Ozzy Osbourne fan, as well he should be. As well he should be. Children that aren't big Ozzy Osbourne fans, of course, should be caned and left at the side of the road to fend for themselves, even at a very young age, for that for that despicable heresy. My son seems to be nodding in agreement with that. And he was this very very high level wizard, and he ended up like my son was playing the character's a bard, and his character was a knoll, so he got to sort of play with. And I ran him in two different D&D games back to back, so I showed the group Tall was with, and not just him. There's a lot of other stuff there. It was really interesting. But I didn't let the players interact with them. I just sort of showcased them and showed them, and they were doing something. The players didn't know what they were doing, and it wasn't for them to figure out until like the next campaign, and then they could actually see what happened and figure it out. And Tall, I just decided, well, he's really going to get a kick out of this Knoll that can actually like knows magic stuff. He's a wizard, but even he's never heard of that before. And my son was playing his Knoll as a ranger bard, so he's like, "Hey, man, who the fuck are you doing, magic man?" And my son would do all these voices, this like hyena, like he studied the different sounds hyenas make, would incorporate those into how he would talk. And I was like, well, okay, Ozzy would think that was just absolutely hilarious. Hearing this Knoll doing all this, it's 7 foot 7 inch Knoll. And so I was like, I fucking love how you talk about it. It's fucking amazing. Go on, and he's fucking outstanding at it, man. This is just fucking outstanding, man. You say, man, you're talking to Tall, it's really, really fucking good, man. And of course, we're doing the occult, leading into the Prince of Darkness sort of character. Not that he was the devil or anything. He was just a wizard, but a very, very, very powerful one. I've always thought Elemaster was straight ass, so I just dunk on him. Most of the other Forgotten Realms NPCs, I don't care for very much. I think they're very cardboard, one dimensional, and shallow. Um, so I had to make my own really high end, neat stuff, cool things to interact with. And as you can tell, Ozzy Osbourne impersonation. So being able to integrate those things in the game to add more depth and variety to the NPC cast, certainly a good thing if you can do voices. Um, I I sat there and tried to get a Malcolm Jamal Warner voice. I couldn't do one that I was really satisfied with. I got it like a 5 out of 10, and I can't even remember how to do it now. But I sat down and watched a lot of footage of him to try to like study the voice up. But eh, it was okay. It was okay. Nothing to be particularly impressed with. But I want to get on here, Barbarian Horde. I want to talk to you guys and just say, man. fucking sucks, man. What a horrible week for the emotional mentalities of all, and those of the '80s. Boy, this was a rough one, man. So, well, we're gonna miss you, Ozzy. We're gonna miss you, Hulk. We're gonna miss you, Theo. So, thanks for what you guys did for my life, for my childhood, and I do appreciate you.